Okay.
Cool. So I feel like I should have gone after Jordan because I also take a look at resilience, but I take a look at it under the framework of critical race theory and systems theory. I also kind of tackle capitalism, the white savior industrial complex, and neoliberals who co-opt the language of the oppressed for their own benefit, and the idea of actually resisting, but in reality, we're just perpetuating the system that keeps certain people oppressed and certain people not. I'm going to speak a little bit candidly here, because you can read my paper and it's all there. All these definitions are there. But I'm the only person of color in a lot of my classes, and I work with BIPOC folks in my internship. And a lot of the material that I've learned in grad school doesn't really translate to certain populations. In about 2 weeks will be George Floyd's 1-year anniversary of when he was murdered. And I remember a year ago, there were a lot of discussions about how to have an anti-racist practice, how to do this, how to have anti-oppression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need to defund the police. We need to do this and that. I'm just at a point in my life right now where like, I'm done talking about what it looks like and I'm ready to embody it in my practice. Because marginalized populations don't have the privilege that we do to learn about all of this stuff. And that's why the stigma exists. And that's why our mental health is so messed up. So how I chose to do that was switch from my original method, which was a hip hop method that nobody asked for, but I wanted to do because I've been working on it for a long time. And, thought it would be, I thought it would be a good population to test it on, which is horrible. So that actually shaped my thesis. I pivoted to do a spring showcase, a community engagement project in which I, as a community organizer, got the community involved, got some donations for food, spoke with the community specialists there. I worked with the kids every week. That's how I tried to employ an anti-oppressive music therapy practice, by how I prepared them for the show and let them have the agency to choose what they wanted. We had critical conversations about language. And you have to remember, I'm working with 6 to 12-year-olds who live in a world where Black people are getting killed every day, and that's the reality. To not address that in your practice, I think is just irresponsible, and also just perpetuates the whole white savior industrial complex of not actually tackling the real problem of things. So in my results, I took some notes about how we were resilient, how we got over some difficult things, and also how community helped shape the resistance. And I think seeing that there were adults in the community that were there for the kids showed them that people are invested in their future and they're worth the fight, especially right now in COVID-19. So some conclusions that I've made and some results that I came to was that music is a source for empowerment, voice, and choice. There were a few kids who sang songs. One of them sang one from Harriet, the soundtrack, and Lean on Me, and some of these Motown and Black songs. And it kind of, validated their existence. Community care over self-care. I think both are important, but I think that community care is more sustainable. And when you live in a world that you can break down for any amount of reasons, any day, as somebody who has a lower socioeconomic, someone who's homeless, right? You need that. Joy is actually an act of resistance as well. And if you look at my Drake meme, glamorizing resiliency is like horrible. I think that we like to think that people can be really strong, but it's not actually tackling why they have to be more resilient. No, resiliency for some marginalized folks is not consensual, because the opposite, like the other option would be death, right? So yeah, instead of resiliency, I promote resistance. And I don't think that it's one or the other. I think we need both, definitely both. But resistance actually looks at why and tries to fight it. So in conclusion, I think that anti-oppressive practices should be built in the infrastructure so that the consequence of that is actually empowerment. And the idea of solidarity and not saviorism. I think internships have a tendency to look a lot like saviorism, and it's unfair because these folks are still going to be needing support and help after we're done. So I really tried to employ a sense of I'm in solidarity with you and you matter after I'm gone. They're still going to be homeless after I leave there. What is our responsibility? I thought about that a lot. The other thing is that music can be transformative. I think that word gets tossed around a lot, but I think in community, it can be transformative because it opens up a whole set of resources that no one can take away from you, which is joy and each other, you know? Why is this important? I think that we still live in a white dominated country structure, and a lot of the things that I'm learning in grad school don't translate for a reason. Instead of cultural competency, I think we really need to take a systems approach and realize that, you know, validation matters. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna end it.
Okay, thoughts and questions?
I love this. I love that your experience informed your like realization, that you came to this breaking point almost of this like wall of frustration of like continuing the same thought and pattern when coming up against like a system, because you're talking in systems theory. And then that informed a new adaptation. Like the yes was like, this is messed up. And the and is what we need is not to adapt to this system, it's to resist it, which I think is like really real. And also the idea of going into communities without an idea of what you are like giving versus offering what your skills are and asking what people want and need and meeting people there. I think that yeah, that's like, woo, yes. I think that's great. Did you already have the spring showcase?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
So cool.
I detail it in there. There's like a lot of notes, but it was great. A big turnout, and I think the buzz from happiness lasts longer than the actual event. So the good thing is that they're going to keep doing it every season, so it's not something. It's in the infrastructure, right? And I think that's part of it. We can be intentional about our resistance, and we can try. Yeah. To not even bring it up, I think, is just irresponsible in a lot of communities that need empowerment. So,
yeah. I'm also really curious about if you go into or mention your experience being a person of color in this grad program and how like this system has felt and fueled your work.
Briefly, but not really, because that would be making it about me again and not the other people. I will say though that you know, I've had classes where I've seen an anti-oppressive practice, and it made the difference, I think. You know, we do pronouns, and I had mine up for a while, and you know, I still get misgendered even in this semester. I didn't choose to be like, I have to be resilient against that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I if anything, I wish that people would just gender me correctly, but if they don't, like, that's another thing of resilience, right? So
right, you've learned, yeah.
It always affects people of color. Just don't see it on TV. I think that's the difference.
Well, thank you. We need to make time for Dina's, but put your thoughts and questions also in the chat. I know I definitely have a number. I'm busy listening, but you know, just wait until I get there. I'll be typing. But yay, you did it! Woo! And you really did do it. Really, you didn't know. Okay, so I'm curious, Corinne, I with two things you brought up, and this actually might speak to the specific situations that, you know, Max talked about, but what about a systems approach to cultural competency? Because if you really think of these different, like, you know, in a sense, Carolyn developed cultural competency within the Zoom language, but you know, each of these theses takes place with a different aspect of the world. And so how I don't know, just describe that a little bit more, because I'm fascinated. You can't, can you?
I don't know. The idea of, because like everybody has a culture, right? It's not like just, you know, we're part of a different culture. I just think when we have to think about generational trauma and how history has created it for some people and others not, you know, and we're not, some communities haven't healed from that. And I think that's the problem, is trying to move forward without healing first as a community. Individuals heal, but individuals are still their skin color when they're, you know what I mean? Like when you're not in your safety zone. So I think that there's competency and then there's community. And I would go more towards community where it's more of an egalitarian, like all hands on deck, equal type of relationship versus a competency, which is like, you're different than me, so I'm going to be competent in you because you're different. So I'm different too. So I think that's just leveling the idea of power dynamics, which is the difference.
That's if I, hear of a job, if just track me down. Forever and ever. For as long as I last at Leslie.
Thank you, Denise. I think sometimes as students, we forget that teachers also are going through it in COVID. So, I appreciate, being a human being and that you don't have to be rigid, right, into a role that we're human. So if you're texting, it's like, we have to communicate somehow. Like, let's use our resources,
Yeah. Yeah. No,